Hello YouTube, I'm Arend Peter. This is part of a series of videos where we're trying to discover how to be informed. In the previous video, I talked about how we should have a clear set of priorities to indicate what's important to us, and today I'll get started on what that looks like for me. I'm not claiming this is the final revision, and I'd be curious to hear what your priority tree looks like to help better inform me of my future revisions. There are more instructions on sharing yours in the description. My high-level groupings for knowledge are self, world, and society. And this video will purely focus on the self branch. This is the branch that's most directly aligned with our self-interest, so the motivation for pursuing this branch should be clear. For self, I'd like to split the sections into resources and assets. The main resources we receive are time and money, and these represent the limitations for how we can develop our assets. Since they're so pivotal on how we develop, it's worth spending time on those specifically. It's probably worthwhile to study up on finances so we can better manage our money and reduce stress in our lives. Similarly, it's in our own interest to track, or at least be aware of, how we're spending our time, so that we can use that resource more efficiently as well. The assets we directly manage are our body, mind, and spirit. Managing our body includes studying nutrition for a healthy diet and learning what physical activity is necessary to keep our body healthy. For our minds, the goal is to provide the right level of challenge to keep us stimulated. I'm a fan of this diagram for explaining it. Too much challenge and we get anxiety, too little and we get boredom. Also, as we become more skilled, we need to increase the challenge. Tweaking the challenge in our lives to maintain that flow state will keep us feeling better overall. The next area of focus is our spirit. Here's roughly how long you'll be alive. This is an infinitesimally small piece of time when you think of it on the scale of all eternity. When thinking about it at that scale, it becomes clear that our physical lives on this planet aren't really that significant. So, how can our small sliver of life even have meaning? Also, does our spirit continue to exist somehow after we die? Pascal's Wager is a thought experiment which highlights the stakes for this problem. And by the way, this is the same Pascal as from Pascal's triangle and the Pascal pressure unit. We can choose to believe in God or not, and then there's actual truth of whether there is a God or not. If we choose to believe in God, then the outcomes are either nothing, if God doesn't exist, or the infinite reward of going to heaven if God does exist. If we choose not to believe in God, then the outcomes are again nothing if God doesn't exist, but this time it's an infinitely negative reward of going to hell if God actually does exist. Pascal's argument is that regardless of the likelihood for God's existence, we'll end up with a positive outcome on average for believing and a negative outcome on average for not believing. So we're better off believing. There are some problems with this argument. Even if you're on board with believing, you're still left with the problem of picking the correct religion. Also, this argument could be used as justification to believe in just about anything, for example, Santa Claus. So I'm certainly not saying that everyone should automatically be religious. For example, I'm currently agnostic, and probably in the optimistic nihilist range. But I still think it's worth my time to continue learning more in the area of religion and spirituality. My personal takeaway is that the argument highlights that the stakes are high and that we should put in the effort to determine the truth for ourselves. This will force us to face our own mortality and hopefully come out of it with a more satisfying interpretation of our own existence. Body, mind, and spirit are also intrinsically related, so working on all three will have compound effects. I haven't done much research yet, but some of the connections I've noticed in the past is that I've noticed feeling physically ill under psychological stress, and I've always mentally felt best when I was most comfortable with my place in the world. The final asset that we manage is our social circle. Psychologist Robin Dunbar did a survey to get an idea of how many friends people have. The result was that we're capable of having roughly 150 casual friendships, but we're much more limited in the number of close friendships we can maintain. Having friends with a variety of perspectives is important. I don't know about you, but when I've considered changing my opinion on a topic, it was almost always because I knew someone who held the contrary opinion, and this forced me to reconsider my values in a way that I wouldn't have if I was only indirectly exposed to the new opinion. The added fact that we're only capable of having a limited number of friends makes it extra important that we're deliberate in how we select our friends. Those are the topics that I think are important to manage as it relates to self. The next branch I'll be covering is the world. For today's additional resources, I tried to recommend a book in the description for every single one of the areas within self. In particular, I had a lot of Christian books to recommend because of my background. So there should be one there for everybody, depending on whether you're a Christian or a skeptic. Go ahead and pick whichever one challenges your viewpoint the most. And also, the lack of other religions is a testament to my ignorance in other areas. So if you have recommendations that you think I should read, then by all means let me know, and I'll get to them, and I will add them to the description. I'll be updating the description as I go. So feel free to, for any video, feel free to recommend anything that you think is worth me looking into.